My actress wife sold the last thing my father left me for $410,000. She did it under stage lights, in front of 300 Hollywood donors, while her co-star stood beside her smiling. This belonged to my husband's father, Celeste Arden told the room. And Ethan wanted it to help someone who still has a dream worth fighting for. I had never agreed to sell it. I had told her no 3 times. The watch was sitting on a velvet cushion beneath an auction spotlight at the Marlowe Foundation Gala in Beverly Hills. A 1967 Patek Philippe Calatrava. Gold case. Cream dial. Brown leather strap. My father had replaced himself because he hated polished alligator bands. On the back, almost worn smooth after 50 years, were 4 words, "For Thomas. Keep going." My grandfather gave it to my father when he came home from Vietnam. Dad wore it when he started his first machine shop. He wore it at my graduation. He wore it the morning he told me the cancer had spread. 3 days before he died, he took it from his wrist and placed it in my hand. "Don't lock it away forever," he said. "Wear it when something matters." I did. At my wedding. At the birth of our son, who died before he reached 24 hours. At Dad's funeral. Then almost never again. Celeste knew every part of that story. She also knew the watch was separate property under our prenuptial agreement. Yet there it was. Lot 37. The Arden family legacy watch. The auction catalog claimed it had been donated by Celeste and Ethan Vale. My name was printed beneath hers. I had learned about the sale 11 minutes earlier. I was not supposed to attend the gala. Celeste told me the event was only another promotional obligation for Glass Harbor, the war drama she had filmed with Julian Cross. Julian had spent the last year becoming unavoidable. He was 36, handsome in the effortless way publicists like to describe as dangerous, and talented enough to make bad behavior sound artistic. He was also Celeste's co-star, producing partner, and according to every entertainment site in Los Angeles, the man with whom she had electrifying chemistry. According to Celeste, he was only a friend. According to our joint calendar, she had spent more nights in hotel suites with him during awards season than she had spent at home. According to her, that was work too. Julian's independent film, The Last Sparrow, had collapsed 2 months earlier when its principal financier withdrew. He needed approximately $3.8 million to complete post-production and secure distribution. Celeste had already invested $1.2 million from her separate earnings. I objected only when she asked me to invest through Vale Meridian Media. Vale Meridian was my company. I had founded it 12 years before meeting Celeste. We financed production insurance, bridge loans, and completion guarantees for independent films. We were not glamorous. We were the people studios called when glamorous people had spent $28 million without finishing the movie. My analysts reviewed Julian's project. They rejected it. The production was 7 weeks behind schedule. Its insurance claims contained inconsistencies. 2 vendors were suing for unpaid invoices. The film's director had quit. And Julian had transferred almost $900,000 from production accounts into a company he personally controlled. I told Celeste I would not put company money into it. She called me jealous. Then she asked me to sell Dad's watch. The first time was at breakfast. "Julian is putting together a private bridge round," she said. "That watch could probably cover 10%. No, you barely wear it. No, your father believed in building things. My father did not know Julian. That's not the point. It is exactly the point." The second time was after an awards dinner. She had been drinking. "You treat dead people better than living ones," she said. I took the watch from the bedroom safe the next morning and moved it to the secure archive at Vale Meridian. The third time came through her business manager. He sent a proposed charitable donation form listing the watch as an in-kind contribution to the Marlowe Foundation. The foundation supported emerging filmmakers. I returned the form and signed. My attorney added a note: "Mr. Vale does not consent to sale, donation, transfer, pledge, exhibition, or appraisal of the watch. It is his sole separate property." That should have ended it. Instead, at 8:14 on Saturday night, my chief financial officer called me. "Ethan, are you watching the Marlowe auction?" "No, you need to." She sent the live stream. Celeste stood on stage beside Julian. Dad's watch was between them. I watched the auctioneer announce that proceeds from the lot would be directed into the foundation's emergency filmmaker fund. That sounded charitable. Then Celeste took the microphone. Tonight, the foundation has agreed that the money from this piece will support a filmmaker very close to my heart. Julian lowered his head modestly. The audience applauded. She continued. Julian Cross put everything he has into The Last Sparrow. Ethan and I believe stories like his deserve to survive. My CFO, Rachel Kim, said through the phone, "You never approved this." "No, do you still physically possess the watch?" "I thought it was in our secure archive." "I'm checking access." I already knew who had access besides me. Vale Meridian's archive held title documents, insurance materials, collectible collateral, and film assets pledged against financing agreements. Celeste had no general access. But as my spouse, she had previously been authorized as an emergency contact. One of our executive assistants could admit her if she claimed she was retrieving personal property. I called security. The overnight supervisor answered. "When was the Arden watch removed?" A pause. "Thursday at 3:42 p.m. By whom?" "Mrs. Vale." "Under whose authorization?" "She said you needed it delivered to Marlowe for insurance appraisal." "Did she sign the release?" "Yes." "Who approved it internally?" "Martin Gage. My operations director." "Preserve the camera footage and access logs." "Nobody edits anything." "Yes, sir." On stage, bidding began at $120,000. I could have called Celeste. I did not. I called Leah Morgan, Vale Meridian's general counsel. "I need an emergency title notice sent to Marlowe Foundation and the auction company." "What happened?" "Celeste removed Dad's watch from our archive and put it into the auction without consent." "How far has bidding gone?" I looked at the screen. 280,000. "Do not bid against the buyer." "I wasn't planning to." "If the auction house received false title documentation, we stop transfer. We do not create a second financial dispute by participating." "Send the notice." "Was the watch individually scheduled on insurance?" "Yes." "Separate property?" "Yes." "Do we have the prior refusal in writing?" 3 of them. "Good." On the screen, Julian touched Celeste's lower back while the bidding reached 350,000. She smiled at him. Then the auctioneer pointed toward a table near the stage. 400,000. Another paddle rose. 410. Silence. The hammer fell. "Sold." The room applauded. Celeste hugged Julian. My father's watch had just become campaign theater for another man's movie. At 8:31, Leah sent the title notice. At 8:34, the auction company acknowledged receipt. At 8:36, the watch was removed from the post-sale transfer table and placed in secure custody. No buyer took possession. The money was frozen pending ownership review. Celeste did not know yet. She and Julian were still posing for photographs. Then Rachel Kim called again. "We have the archive footage." "Show me." I opened the secure link. Thursday afternoon. Celeste entered Vale Meridian with Martin Gage. Martin had worked for me for 5 years. He managed production collateral and high-value asset releases. The security camera had no audio in the hallway. The archive room did. Every asset withdrawal was recorded because insurers required a verbal chain of custody. Martin scanned the watch case. "Mrs. Vale, I need Ethan's written release." Celeste placed a document on the counter. "I have it." Martin read it. "This is his old signature authorization for family property. It covers personal assets, not individually insured collectibles. Ethan knows about the gala. That isn't the same as consent." Celeste leaned closer. "Martin, Julian's film loses its completion bond Monday if we don't close this round." "I understand, but Ethan is being difficult because he hates Julian. That does not give me authority." Then she said, "He'll complain, but he won't embarrass me publicly. Once the auction is over, he'll let it go." My stomach went cold. Martin still hesitated. Celeste continued. "You know what happens if The Last Sparrow collapses? I lose my investment. Marlowe loses its showcase project. Julian gets sued. Hundreds of crew members may never be paid." Martin said, "That still doesn't make the watch yours." "No. It makes Ethan's refusal selfish." She knew. Not confusion. Not shared marital property. Not an accidental misunderstanding. She knew exactly who owned it. Martin finally opened the cabinet. "I'm documenting that release occurred at your request." "Fine. And that I did not receive Ethan's direct approval." Celeste smiled. "He'll never take this to court." The video ended with her carrying Dad's watch out in a black insurance case. Leah watched the same recording. That is enough to terminate Martin. Yes. It may also support conversion or theft allegations depending on what she represented to the auction house. I don't want assumptions. Get the paperwork. Already requested. 10 minutes later, Marlowe's counsel sent the donor file. Someone had submitted a declaration stating that Celeste and I jointly owned the watch and jointly authorized its charitable sale. My electronic signature appeared beneath hers. I had never signed it. The metadata showed the form originated from Celeste's production office. The verification code was sent to an old email account still listed in our household password manager. The same pattern had occurred in smaller things before. A charity photograph. A sponsorship approval. A producer dinner added under my company's name. Celeste always described it as saving time. This time, saving time had put my forged signature beneath the sale of my father's property. Leah's voice changed. Ethan, this is no longer only an auction dispute. I know. You need family counsel. I know. And we have to disclose the signature issue to the auction company and insurer. Do it. What about the studio? That question mattered. Celeste was under a 3-picture contract with Monarch Studios. Her agreement contained morality, fraud, and disclosure provisions. Her production company also had a first-look deal worth almost $20 million. A forged authorization tied to a high-profile charity event could become material. But I was not going to call Monarch simply because I wanted revenge. Only if their rights or funds are involved, I said. Rachel interrupted from the other line. They are. She had been reviewing Julian's financing package. The Marlowe proceeds aren't actually going into a general filmmaker fund. What do you mean? The foundation signed a restricted grant agreement. Lot 37 proceeds were earmarked specifically for The Last Sparrow. That was announced. There's more. The grant triggers a matching contribution from Monarch. How much? $3 for every auction dollar, up to $1.5 million. I understood immediately. The $410,000 sale was supposed to unlock $1.23 million in studio money. Dad's watch was not just a symbolic donation. It was the key used to access a corporate matching fund. And who submitted the matching certification? I asked. Rachel turned her screen. Celeste Arden Productions. The certification stated that all donated assets used to trigger studio matching funds were lawfully owned by the donor and transferred with valid authorization. Celeste signed it personally. If the auction company accepted the sale and Monarch released its match, she would have used property she knew was not hers and my forged signature to obtain more than $1 million for Julian's film. Has Monarch sent the money? Leah asked. Not yet. Monday morning. Then notify their general counsel now. No press. No anonymous leak. No entertainment reporter. Just the parties whose money and property were involved. At 9:07, Monarch froze the matching payment. At 9:12, Marlowe suspended the restricted grant. At 9:18, the auction company formally voided the transfer pending title investigation. At 9:24, Celeste finally called me. Her voice was low and furious. What did you do? I asserted ownership of my watch. You humiliated me in front of the foundation. I'm not at the gala. They just pulled Julian into a legal meeting. That sounds like their decision. You froze the matching money. Monarch froze its money after seeing the ownership documents. You could have called me first. I told you no 3 times. This was for a film. It was my father's watch. You weren't using it. That sentence does not transfer ownership. She breathed hard. You are willing to destroy Julian's film over a watch. No. Julian's financing was already failing. This would have saved it. With my property. With an object sitting in a vault. With the last thing my father placed in my hand before he died. Silence. Then she said the sentence I would remember through the entire divorce. Your father is dead, Ethan. Julian still has a future. Something inside me stopped hurting. Not healed. Stopped negotiating. Did you sign my name on the donation form? She became quiet. Celeste. My office handled the paperwork. Did you authorize them to use my signature? I knew you would refuse if they asked again. Did you certify to Monarch that the watch was lawfully transferred? Because I believed you would let it go after the auction. So yes. Her voice dropped. You don't understand what this project means to me. I understand exactly what my father meant to me. That watch cannot love you back. Neither can a career. She hung up. At 9:40, Monarch requested the archive video. Leah provided it under confidentiality. At 10:03, the studio placed Celeste's first look production agreement under immediate compliance review. At 10:16, its finance department suspended every payment connected to The Last Sparrow. At 10:31, Marlowe's board opened an investigation into how the false donor declaration passed review. Julian's completion bond expired at midnight. No studio match arrived. No restricted grant cleared. His film did not collapse because I refused to fund it. It collapsed because the money keeping it alive depended on property its producers did not own. I drove to the auction company's secure office before midnight. Leah came with me. The buyer had agreed to rescission after reviewing the title notice. A representative placed the watch on a black cloth. Dad's strap. Dad's scratches. The worn engraving. Nothing had changed. Except me. I fastened it around my wrist. For the first time since his funeral, I wore it because something mattered. Then Leah handed me a second file. Monarch's internal compliance team had found an email Celeste sent Julian 2 days before she took the watch. He had asked, "What if Ethan stops the auction?" Celeste replied, "He won't. He hates public scandal more than he loves that watch. Once the studio match hits, it'll be too late to unwind." Julian answered, "And if he tries?" Celeste wrote, "Then Hollywood gets to decide whether he's the grieving husband who killed a movie over a dead man's jewelry." She thought my love for my father could be turned into bad publicity. She thought my silence could become consent. And she thought the studio money would make the theft irreversible before I acted. I did not need to destroy her career that night. She had already created the evidence that would do it. All I had to do was stop protecting her from the record. By Monday morning, Celeste had 3 lawyers. One represented her personally. One represented Celeste Arden Productions. The third represented The Last Sparrow, which had become legally separate from both because its financing documents were now under review. None represented me. That was useful. For years, Celeste treated our marriage as a private extension of her career. If a studio problem reached home, I was expected to solve it as her husband. If one of my business boundaries inconvenienced her, I was accused of becoming corporate. Now every interest had its own counsel. At 8:15, Monarch Studios suspended Celeste's first look agreement. Not terminated. Suspended pending investigation. The distinction mattered. Studios did not destroy multi-million-dollar relationships because one spouse made an accusation. They reviewed documents. Monarch's compliance team had 4 things. My written refusal to donate the watch. The archive recording showing Celeste knew she lacked consent. The donor form bearing my unauthorized signature. And her certification that the watch was lawfully transferred to trigger the studio's matching contribution. At 8:42, Monarch asked Celeste to explain. Her attorney replied that the watch had been treated as shared family property and that any signature irregularity resulted from administrative misunderstanding. At 8:47, my lawyer sent the prenuptial agreement. Schedule A listed the watch by serial number as my separate property. At 8:53, Monarch requested a second explanation. This time, Celeste's lawyer stopped using the phrase shared property. Julian Cross called me at 9. I did not answer. He texted instead. "You got your watch back. Let the film breathe." I forwarded the message to Leah. Another arrived. Celeste made a bad call because she believed in this project. Don't punish 120 crew members because you're angry at me. That number was already appearing everywhere. 120 crew members. Julian mentioned them. Celeste mentioned them. Her publicist mentioned them in a statement issued just after 10. Celeste Arden acted from a sincere desire to protect a film employing more than 100 working artists and technicians. No statement said the crew had been waiting months for payment because Julian's production accounts were short. No statement mentioned the $900,000 transferred to his personal company. The workers were useful when famous people needed moral cover. Vale Meridian's analysts had spent 6 weeks reviewing The Last Sparrow. I asked Rachel Kim to reopen the file. "Everything," I said. "Production ledger too?" "Especially that." By noon, she had an answer. Julian's film did not need $3.8 million simply to finish. It needed $1.4 million for remaining post-production. The rest would cover old debts, producer fees, legal settlements, and 2 unusual payments to Crosswind Creative Holdings. Julian owned Crosswind. What were the payments for? I asked. Consulting and international packaging. Who approved them? Julian. Who performed the consulting? No outside vendor listed. Rachel turned another page. There's also a $260,000 payment for a villa in Lake Como. Production housing? The movie shot in New Mexico. I stared at her. Personal? Looks that way. Then she showed me the worst entry. 3 months before the film ran out of cash, Crosswind received $480,000 described as a producer loan repayment. There was no original producer loan in the audited financing schedule. Julian had repaid himself money the production records did not show him lending. Celeste had invested after those transfers. Did she know? I asked. We don't have evidence. Then do not assume. That distinction would matter throughout everything that followed. Celeste had stolen my watch for Julian. That did not mean she knew every financial lie he told. At 1:30, Monarch suspended the matching program entirely and opened a forensic audit of The Last Sparrow. The Marlowe Foundation did the same. Julian's completion bond company issued a default notice. By 3, entertainment reporters were describing the project as in crisis. My name appeared in most articles. One headline read, Hollywood financier blocks wife's charity gift, jeopardizing indie film. Another, grief or revenge? Ethan Vale stops 1.2M match over father's watch. Celeste's strategy had worked for several hours. I looked like the husband who valued an object more than jobs. Then Marlowe released a short factual statement. The auction transfer was suspended after evidence indicated that the donated asset may not have been owned by the listed donor. No matching funds were released. The tone changed immediately. Reporters started asking who had signed the donor certification. Monarch declined comment. Celeste's publicist stopped returning calls. At 4, she appeared at Vale Meridian. Security called upstairs. Mrs. Vale is requesting access. To what? She says she needs personal files from the executive suite. Leah was already in my office. Do you want her admitted? Only with an escort. No archive access. Celeste arrived 5 minutes later wearing sunglasses despite the indoor lighting. She closed the office door behind her. Leah remained. Celeste looked at her. Can we speak privately? No, I said. I am your wife. You are under investigation involving my company's property. Her mouth tightened. You're enjoying this. No, you've wanted Julian's film to fail since I invested. I wanted you to read the audit. I did. Then you knew Vale Meridian rejected it. Your analysts reject anything they can't quantify. We quantified the missing money. Her expression changed. What missing money? I watched her carefully. The Crosswind transfers. She said nothing. The Lake Como villa. Still nothing. The fake producer loan repayment. Her face lost color. What are you talking about? That reaction looked real. I asked Rachel to join us. She brought the audit summary. Celeste read the first page standing. By the second, she sat down. No, Rachel remained professional. These are production bank records provided during our financing review. Julian told me Crosswind covered emergency development costs. We requested documentation. None was provided. He said the villa was for a distributor retreat. The invoice lists 12 guests. 7 were personal friends. No distributor representatives attended. Celeste flipped pages faster. How much did he take? We can document $1.08 million in questionable related party payments. The independent audit may find more. Celeste looked at me. You knew this and didn't tell me? I told you the project failed our review. You said the finances were unreliable. They were. You didn't tell me Julian was stealing. We could not prove theft from incomplete records. You let me invest $1.2 million. You invested from your separate account after I advised you not to. Her voice rose. You could have stopped me. No, you stop everything else. I give advice. I do not control your money. That answer angered her because it removed the story she preferred. A controlling husband could be blamed. A husband who warned her and allowed her to make her own decision left the decision where it belonged. Celeste threw the audit onto my desk. He told me your refusal was personal. Of course he did. He said you hated that audiences liked us together. I hated that you treated a failing project as proof of loyalty. He said you were trying to humiliate me. You took my father's watch. She flinched. That was before I knew this. You knew the watch was mine. I'm talking about Julian. So am I. She stood. I need to confront him. Leah spoke for the first time. Do not discuss the audit with Mr. Cross until Monarch's investigators complete evidence preservation. Celeste stared at her. He stole from a film I financed. Then preserve your rights instead of warning him what investigators found. For once, Celeste listened. She left without taking any files. At 5:22, Julian called her. We knew because Monarch later recovered the call from his production office's recorded business line. Celeste did not mention the audit. She asked one question. Did Crosswind take money out of the film? Julian laughed. Ethan got to you. That is not an answer. Producer entities get reimbursed. For what? Development. Show me the invoices. I'm not doing accounting theater because your husband is angry. Did you use film money for Lake Como? Silence. Then Julian said, that trip was part of international positioning. Which distributor attended? You don't understand how these relationships work. I have worked in this industry for 18 years. You're an actress, Celeste. The sentence sat between them. Not producing partner. Not financier. Actress. The useful face. Julian continued. Your job was to help people believe in the movie. Ethan's job was supposed to fund it. Instead he turned your marriage problem into a forensic audit. My marriage problem? You know what he's doing. What? Making you choose. Celeste's voice went quiet. I already chose. Julian misunderstood. Good. She answered, that's the problem. Then she hung up. The next morning, Monarch's forensic team found that Julian had altered production reports provided to Celeste before her investment. Expenses linked to Crosswind were moved into general production categories. The villa became international sales. The fake loan repayment became producer advances. Celeste had been deceived. That did not erase what she did with my watch. It created two separate truths. Julian used her. She used me. At noon, Celeste's attorney offered a settlement. She would admit the auction authorization was invalid. She would reimburse Vale Meridian's legal and insurance costs. She would publicly state that I never approved the donation. In exchange, I would decline to pursue any civil claim involving the unauthorized removal and signature. Leah looked at me. That is commercially reasonable if restitution is complete. What about the forged signature? Monarch and the insurer already have it. Whether law enforcement becomes involved is not entirely yours to control. I thought about Dad. He had spent 36 years running a machine shop where every employee knew exactly who owned which tool. Not because he was possessive. Because property and responsibility had to remain clear when something went wrong. I'll settle the civil claim if she admits the facts accurately, I said. No confidentiality? No, Celeste accepted. Her statement went public at 2 o'clock. The watch auctioned at the Marlowe Foundation Gala belonged solely to my husband, Ethan Vale. He did not authorize its sale or donation. I approved paperwork that used his signature without valid consent. I regret doing so and have agreed to reimburse resulting costs. It was devastating because it contained no publicist language. No grief. No film workers. No Julian. Just what happened. Monarch suspended her first look agreement indefinitely. 2 brands paused endorsement campaigns. A streaming platform delayed announcement of a limited series she was expected to lead. Her agency did not drop her. Not yet. Then the forensic audit found another document. 3 weeks before the gala, Julian sent Celeste a financing plan titled, Arden Leverage Strategy. The plan proposed using Celeste's marriage to unlock resources Vale Meridian would not provide directly. One line read, Ethan will not fund Julian, but he will protect Celeste from public embarrassment. Structure commitment so refusal damages her first. Celeste replied, that only works if he knows after the commitment is public. Julian answered, exactly. She had not merely taken Dad's watch in a moment of desperation. She had discussed a strategy built around making my refusal costly after public commitments were already made. The watch was one execution of that strategy. There were others. Monarch's auditors found 2 letters of support for the last sparrow carrying Vale Meridian's logo. I had never approved them. A distributor had relied on one. A post-production vendor had relied on the other before extending $600,000 in credit. Both documents were created by Celeste Arden Productions. My name appeared at the bottom. The watch was no longer one terrible decision. It was the first piece of property large enough to make me look. The 2 Vale Meridian support letters were worse than the watch. The watch was personal property. The letters put my company's credit behind Julian's film. One had been sent to Silverline Distribution. It stated that Vale Meridian Media intended to support completion financing for The Last Sparrow subject only to routine documentation. We intended no such thing. Our investment committee had rejected the film 16 days earlier. The second letter went to Caldera Post, the company handling color grading, visual effects, and final mastering. It said Vale Meridian had reviewed and approved the project's remaining completion budget and expected to participate in the next financing round. Caldera relied on that representation when it agreed to continue working despite $600,000 in unpaid invoices. My electronic signature appeared beneath both letters. So did Vale Meridian's logo. Neither document had passed through our legal department. Neither existed in our document management system. Rachel Kim looked across the conference table. If those vendors can prove reliance, we may face claims even though the letters were unauthorized. Leah Morgan nodded. We need to notify them immediately, preserve the originals, and make clear that Vale Meridian never approved these representations. Will that shut down the film? Rachel answered carefully. It may shut down Caldera's work if they refuse further credit. That is not our decision. No, I stared at the PDF on the screen. The signature looked almost perfect. Not copied from the auction form. Older. Then I recognized it. 4 years earlier, I signed a general letter authorizing Celeste Arden Productions to negotiate hotel blocks, publicity vendors, and non-binding appearance logistics for a film festival. Someone had lifted the signature image. The text beneath it was new. How many documents used this signature? I asked. Leah looked toward our forensic consultant. We don't know yet. Find out. Vale Meridian sent fraud notices to Silverline and Caldera before noon. Both acknowledged receipt. Silverline immediately paused its distribution discussions. Caldera stopped all unpaid work and placed the film's master files under contractual hold. Julian's attorneys accused us of intentional interference. Leah answered with the unauthorized letters. They stopped using that phrase. At 12:40, Monarch Studios expanded its investigation from the Marlowe auction to Celeste Arden Productions' entire relationship with Vale Meridian. Celeste called me 20 minutes later. I need to come in. Your attorney should contact Leah. This isn't only legal. That stopped being true when my company name appeared on financing letters. I didn't know there were 2. The wording caught me. You knew there was 1? Silence. Celeste. I knew about the Caldera letter. Did you authorize it? I approved language saying your company was reviewing the project. That is not what the letter says. Julian's producer handled the final version. Did you give them my signature? No, did you know they had it? She did not answer quickly enough. Celeste. Yes. How? Julian said his financing team had prior Vale Meridian documents. And that didn't concern you? I thought they were using them as templates. Templates with my signature? I told him not to make anything binding. I almost laughed. The letter promised financing strongly enough for a vendor to extend $600,000 of credit. What did you think the letter was for? To keep Caldera from walking while we closed the bridge round. With whose credibility? She lowered her voice. Yours. That was the answer. My money had been refused. So they used my reputation instead. Did Caldera know I had rejected the film? No, did you? Yes. Then you allowed them to believe the opposite. I thought we would fix the financing before it mattered. That sentence keeps appearing. What? Do it first. Make it irreversible. Assume I'll clean it up later. She began crying. Ethan, I know how this looks. It looks like what happened. No. Julian kept pushing everything further than I agreed. Then tell Monarch exactly where your agreement ended. I am. Not me. Them. She stopped. I'm afraid they'll terminate the first look deal. That is a consequence of what they find. I built that company for 11 years. And you used mine to support it without permission. You think I deserve to lose everything? No, what do you think I deserve? A record that says what you actually did. She ended the call. At 2, Celeste met Monarch's compliance team with her attorneys. I was not present. Later, through document sharing rights connected to Vale Meridian's name, Leah received the portions relevant to us. Celeste admitted 3 things. She knew Vale Meridian had rejected the last sparrow. She approved using Vale Meridian's name in a non-binding support letter to Caldera. And she knew Julian's team possessed a prior signature image. She denied authorizing them to present a financing commitment. Then Monarch showed her the draft history. The first draft said, Vale Meridian has reviewed the project and remains in discussions regarding possible participation. Celeste edited it. She replaced, remains in discussions, with, expects to participate in the next completion round. Her comment read, needs to sound strong enough that Caldera doesn't stop. The final version went further. Julian's producer changed, expects to participate, to, intends to support completion financing. Celeste did not make the last alteration. She made the one that opened the door. Monarch then showed her the Silverline letter. She claimed she had never seen it. Forensic email records supported her. Julian's team copied the Caldera template, strengthened the language, and sent it without Celeste. Again, 2 truths. Julian escalated the fraud. Celeste created the method. At 4, Monarch suspended all development funds payable to Celeste Arden Productions. Her company had 3 projects in early stages. A limited series, a historical drama, and a romantic thriller Celeste planned to direct. All 3 entered legal review. No one had cancelled them yet. But producers stopped scheduling meetings. That was how Hollywood careers often died. Not with one dramatic announcement. With invitations that stopped arriving. Agents who said they needed time. Studios that delayed decisions until another actress became easier to insure. At 5, Celeste's agency requested an internal interview. At 6, her longtime agent, Marissa Cole, called me. Ethan, I'm not asking you to protect Celeste. Good. I need to understand whether Vale Meridian intends to file a criminal complaint. That decision belongs to counsel and affected parties. Will you personally request prosecution? I am not directing the process. She believes you are. She believed I would accept the watch auction too. Marissa sighed. She is unraveling. That is something her attorney and therapist should handle. She says Julian manipulated her. He did. So you believe her? I believe evidence shows he deceived her about some finances and expanded documents beyond what she approved. And the rest? She knowingly used my company's credibility after we rejected the film. Marissa became quiet. I've represented her for 15 years. Then you know she hates being told no. She hears no as doubt. That does not authorize my signature. No, Marissa ended the call. The agency dropped Celeste the next morning. Its public statement cited, material non-disclosure affecting client representation. Her publicist resigned an hour later. 3 brands canceled contracts under morality and fraud clauses. The streaming platform removed her from the limited series pending review. Monarch terminated the First Look deal. Not because she auctioned a watch. Because its investigation found a pattern of unauthorized representations involving studio money, vendor credit, and false financing expectations. The termination letter was 14 pages. It cited the watch certification, the fabricated Vale Meridian support, the Arden leverage strategy, and her failure to disclose the conflict during earlier financing discussions. Julian's company received its own notice. Crosswind Creative Holdings was barred from seeking Monarch funding while the audit continued. Then Caldera Post sued. Not me. Not initially. It sued The Last Sparrow, Julian, Crosswind, and Celeste Arden Productions for unpaid invoices and fraudulent inducement. Vale Meridian was named only as a party whose identity had allegedly been used without authorization. That distinction mattered. Our immediate financial exposure decreased. Our reputational exposure did not. Industry lenders began calling. Had Vale Meridian secretly promised financing and withdrawn? Was I using a marital dispute to escape a commitment? Would other letters surface? I spent 2 days answering questions created by signatures I never made. We hired an independent forensic firm to review every external document carrying my signature during the previous 3 years. By Friday, they found 9 questionable uses. 4 were harmless administrative shortcuts. A festival invitation. A hotel guarantee letter. A charity seating agreement. A publicity release. I had not signed them, but no one suffered financial harm. 5 were different. The Marlowe donation. The Caldera support letter. The Silverline letter. A private lender introduction stating Vale Meridian stood behind Celeste Arden's production activities. And a vendor assurance saying my company would ensure outstanding obligations were resolved if necessary. That last sentence was almost a guarantee. The vendor had extended another $240,000 in services. Who sent it? I asked. Forensics traces it to Celeste's office, Leah said. Did she write it? We have edit history. She opened the document. The original sentence read, Ethan is aware of the outstanding balance and believes the project will resolve it shortly. Celeste changed it to, Vale Meridian is aware of the outstanding balance and will ensure it is resolved if necessary. Her comment, they need certainty, not another maybe. I leaned back. She wrote this one. Yes. Did she send it? Yes. Was Julian copied? Yes. What did he say? Leah showed me the email. Julian replied, that's the Ethan we need. Celeste answered, he'll hate the wording, but he won't let people go unpaid. There it was again. My responsibility converted into collateral. She believed if vendors trusted my name, I would eventually pay rather than watch innocent workers suffer. And she was right about the instinct. Wrong about what I would do with it. Vale Meridian established a temporary legal assistance fund for small vendors directly affected by forged assurances, without admitting liability. Not to save Julian's film. To prevent freelancers from being crushed while courts decided who owed what. Every payment created a subrogation claim against the responsible production entities. Rachel opposed the plan initially. We could be funding people who should recover from Julian. They may wait years. And shareholders? We disclosed the program and cap it. The board approved $1 million. We expected to recover part through litigation. It was not charity. It was damage control designed to protect people whose trust had been misused in our name. Celeste heard about the fund through her lawyer. She sent one message. You're paying the vendors anyway. I stared at it for several seconds before answering. I'm helping people you used my name to expose. That is not the same as financing Julian. She replied almost immediately. I know. I'm sorry. No argument followed. At the end of the week, federal investigators contacted Monarch. The studio match had never been released, which limited some fraud exposure. But the false certification had been used in an attempt to obtain more than $1 million. The auction paperwork and financing letters crossed state lines electronically. The U.S. Attorney's Office requested preservation. Celeste's lawyers advised her to stop speaking publicly. Julian did the opposite. He appeared outside a restaurant and told reporters, Ethan Vale has spent years controlling Celeste through money. She tried to support a film she believed in, and he turned it into a criminal investigation. The clip spread immediately. I said nothing. Then Monarch's audit released one internal email to law enforcement. Julian had written to Celeste 3 days before the auction, if Ethan threatens legal action, we frame it as financial abuse. He won't want that fight while Vale Meridian is raising its next fund. Celeste replied, don't use that unless he actually attacks me. Julian answered, stopping the money is the attack. She had not agreed completely. She had not rejected the strategy either. When Julian publicly called me controlling, he followed a plan they had discussed before I knew my father's watch was missing. That afternoon, Celeste requested a private meeting through our divorce attorneys. I had retained family counsel 2 days earlier. We met in a neutral office with both lawyers present. Celeste looked exhausted. No stylist. No jewelry except her wedding ring. I'm going to cooperate with Monarch and the Federal Review, she said. That is sensible. I gave them access to Arden Productions servers. Good. I also told them which documents I changed. I waited. The Caldera letter. The vendor assurance. The Marlowe certification. And my signature? I did not paste it myself. Did you know it would be there? Yes. Her voice cracked. I told my team to use the old authorization format. That means yes. Yes. She removed the wedding ring and placed it on the table. I kept telling myself you would fix everything because you always did. I warned you about Julian's film. I know. I refused financing. I know. I refused the watch. I know. And you kept changing the structure until my no became expensive enough to ignore. Tears ran down her face. Yes. Why? Because Julian believed in me. No. Why did that require my company? She looked down. Because his belief needed money. That was the first honest sentence she had given me about him. He made me feel like I was more than an actress, she continued. He called me a producer, a partner, someone who could build films instead of waiting for studios to cast me. And when the numbers failed? I thought if I saved his film, it proved he was right about me. So my refusal became an insult. Yes. My father's watch became available capital. She closed her eyes. Yes. My reputation became a guarantee. Yes. And our marriage became leverage. She covered her face. Yes. My attorney placed the divorce petition on the table. Celeste looked at it for several seconds. You already filed? This morning. She touched the first page but did not pick it up. Is there any chance you'll withdraw it? No, she nodded as if she had expected the answer. Are you going to ask for my production company? No, our prenuptial agreement keeps it separate. Yes. The house? We divide it according to the agreement. My earnings? Yours. Then what do you want? The watch is already back. That's all? No, I looked at her. I want my name to stop appearing on decisions I did not make. The next morning, Celeste Arden Productions issued formal notices to every vendor, lender, studio, and foundation with whom it had used Vale Meridian's name. The notices identified which statements lacked authorization. No spin. No claim that I secretly approved. No suggestion that I was punishing a movie. Her company also created a restitution pool funded from Celeste's separate assets. She sold a Malibu investment property to fund it. Not our marital home. Hers. That was the first consequence she paid without trying to transfer part of it to me. Then the federal investigators found the recording that changed the case again. It came from Julian's production office. A week before the gala, Celeste had asked whether using Dad's watch could become criminal. Julian answered, only if Ethan decides to treat his wife like a thief. Celeste said, he won't. How do you know? Because if he makes this public, everyone will ask why his marriage reached the point where I had to take it. Julian laughed. Then the marriage protects us. Celeste replied, it always has. They had mistaken my silence for a legal structure. My loyalty for authorization. My marriage for insurance against consequences. The recording proved the watch was never only about grief or a desperate film. Celeste knew she lacked consent. She simply believed being my wife meant I would never force the world to recognize that fact. The production office recording changed the federal review. Until then, Celeste's lawyers could argue that she misunderstood how serious the paperwork had become. The recording removed that defense. She asked whether taking my father's watch could be criminal. Julian told her the only real danger was whether I chose to treat her like a thief. Celeste answered that I would not. Not because she believed the watch was hers. Because she believed our marriage would keep me silent. Federal investigators did not arrest her. They requested another interview. Celeste attended with 2 criminal defense attorneys and provided access to every Arden Productions device. Her lawyers negotiated a limited-use agreement for statements concerning documents she voluntarily identified. No immunity. No promise that charges would disappear. The interview lasted 7 hours. I saw only the portions later produced in our civil case. Did Ethan Vale authorize the watch donation? The investigator asked. No. Did you know that when you removed it? Yes. Did you expect the auction to proceed before he discovered the transfer? Yes. Why? Because once the sale was public, I believed he would decide reversing it caused more damage than letting it happen. Damage to whom? My career. Julian's film. The foundation. What about Mr. Vale? Celeste was silent. The investigator repeated the question. What damage did the unauthorized sale cause Ethan? I did not let myself think about that. Why not? Because if I did, I would have had to stop. That answer appeared in the official interview summary. So did her admissions about the Caldera letter and the vendor assurance. She acknowledged knowing Vale Meridian had rejected the film. She acknowledged approving stronger language specifically so vendors would continue extending credit. She acknowledged authorizing use of an old signature format without asking me. She denied creating the Silverline letter. Forensics supported that denial. Julian's production team had copied the method and escalated it without her. The government now had a division of responsibility. That was more dangerous for Julian than a simple scandal where everyone could blame everyone else. Celeste had done enough herself. Julian had done more. At Monarch Studios, the same distinction shaped the internal findings. Celeste's first look deal remained terminated. Her 3 development projects were released back to her company rather than confiscated. Monarch retained no obligation to finance them. The limited series replaced her. The historical drama went into turnaround. The romantic thriller she hoped to direct lost its distributor. Her acting contract on 2 future films contained discretionary suspension clauses. One studio exercised the option. The second placed her role under review. No blacklist existed. No executive made a phone call saying Celeste Arden could never work again. The industry simply stopped treating her as low risk. Insurance premiums increased. Bond companies requested additional approvals. Financiers demanded representations that Arden Productions had no authority to use third-party names or signatures without direct verification. An actress who had once been invited into rooms because her name reduced uncertainty now increased it. That was how a Hollywood career changed direction. Not because I controlled it. Because trust was part of the product. Julian publicly insisted otherwise. He appeared on an entertainment podcast and accused me of using corporate infrastructure to punish a woman for choosing artistic independence. The host asked whether he had approved the use of my signature. Julian said, "I never handled Ethan's personal paperwork." That answer lasted 6 hours. Then federal investigators obtained his text to a producer, "Use the veil format. Celeste says Ethan always caves after commitments become public." Another message read, "Don't ask him directly. A direct no creates discoverable problems." His attorney advised him to stop speaking. The podcast episode disappeared from his social accounts by evening. Vale Meridian filed a civil action against Crosswind Creative Holdings and the Last Sparrow production entity. Not for defamation. For unauthorized use of our name, fraudulent representations, and costs incurred protecting vendors who relied on those representations. Celeste Arden Productions was included initially. 3 days later, Celeste offered full cooperation and restitution. Our board considered whether to pursue her company separately. Rachel Kim asked the question directly. "Are we treating Celeste differently because she's your wife? Soon to be ex-wife." That doesn't answer it. No, the boardroom became quiet. Rachel continued. "If another producer knowingly used our company's name to obtain credit after we rejected financing, we would sue." Yes. So why settle? Because she is offering document access, identifying every unauthorized use, reimbursing our direct costs, and funding restitution. Would that be enough from another producer? Leah answered. Potentially. Litigation exists to recover losses and stop conduct. If those objectives are achieved through settlement, continuing only to maximize pain is not necessarily good governance. Rachel looked toward me. Then make the record say that. We did. Celeste Arden Productions entered a written settlement. It admitted unauthorized representations. It reimbursed Vale Meridian's forensic, insurance, and legal costs. It waived any claim that my company had promised financing for The Last Sparrow. It established a restitution process for vendors who relied on Arden-originated assurances. And it agreed to independent document controls for 5 years if the company continued operating. In exchange, Vale Meridian dismissed its direct civil claims against Celeste's company without confidentiality. Crosswind and Julian received no such settlement. They disputed everything. That choice would matter later. Our divorce moved faster than the Hollywood investigations. The prenuptial agreement was clear. Vale Meridian remained mine. Arden Productions remained hers. Celeste's separate investment in Julian's film remained her loss. The Beverly Hills house, purchased during the marriage, would be sold unless one of us bought out the other. Joint investment accounts would be divided equally. Neither of us requested spousal support. Then my family attorney found a problem. Celeste had pledged part of our joint brokerage account as collateral for an Arden Productions credit line. My signature appeared on the collateral authorization. Again. I had not signed it. The amount was $2.6 million. The line had not been fully drawn, but the bank had advanced $900,000 during the previous year. Where did the money go? I asked. My attorney turned the statement. Most funded ordinary Arden Productions expenses. Payroll. Office rent. Development. Then $300,000 moved into The Last Sparrow. The transfer occurred 4 days after Vale Meridian rejected the project. I called Celeste through counsel. This time, both family attorneys attended. Did you pledge the joint account? I asked. She looked exhausted. Yes. Did you know I had not agreed? Yes. Why wasn't this in your first disclosure? I forgot the account was joint collateral. You forgot? I thought my production company had replaced it with another guarantee. Did it? No, my attorney asked, who prepared Ethan's authorization? Celeste closed her eyes. My business manager. Did you tell him Ethan had approved? I told him Ethan knew about the credit line. Did he know? I had mentioned needing one. That is not approval. I know. It was the same pattern again. Information became consent. Marriage became authority. Silence became a signature. The bank froze additional draws immediately after receiving notice. Celeste agreed to replace the joint collateral with her separate securities within 5 business days. She did. No litigation was necessary. But the discovery destroyed one story she had still been telling herself. The watch was not the first time she took something because asking me directly might produce a no. It was only the first thing she took that carried my father's name instead of an account number. At the next divorce mediation, Celeste arrived with a complete list of every financial authorization her office had ever processed using my name. 37 items. Most were valid. 11 were not. Some were minor. A hotel contract. A charity guarantee. A festival deposit. Others involved real money. The credit line. The vendor assurance. The production letters. The auction certification. Her attorney asked whether I wanted forensic review of all 11 before settlement. Yes. Celeste nodded. No objection. That surprised me more than tears would have. 3 months earlier, she would have called it humiliation. Now she understood that verification was the minimum cost of trust already broken. During a break, she asked to speak with me while both attorneys remained nearby. Did Dad ever know you hated Hollywood? He didn't hate Hollywood. He hated what it did to me. He thought you were talented. She looked up. He did? Yes. He barely spoke to me. He barely spoke to anyone after chemotherapy. Her face changed. I thought he never accepted me. He worried that fame made every relationship transactional. That sounds like not accepting me. He worried about me too. She wiped her eyes. Did he know what the watch was worth? He knew approximately. And he still wore it in the machine shop? Yes. Why? Because to him it was a watch before it was an asset. She looked toward my wrist. I was wearing it again. I turned it into financing. Yes. I keep trying to find a sentence that makes that less ugly. There probably isn't one. Did you love him more than me? No, the question irritated me less than it once would have. You are still trying to rank love as if one relationship had to lose for another to matter. I sold the object connected to him for another man. Yes. So maybe I deserve to think that way. You deserve to understand what you did. You do not need to invent a competition my father never entered. She cried quietly. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Was Julian the reason you filed? No, the watch? No, what then? You knew I would refuse and built systems designed to make my refusal irrelevant. She stopped. The watch showed it clearly, I continued. But the marriage ended because you believed my boundaries were obstacles instead of decisions. I thought spouses were supposed to save each other. Save each other from what? Failure. You were trying to save Julian's film. She looked down. I know. And you expected me to save you from the way you chose to do it. Yes. Our attorneys returned. The mediation resumed. Celeste offered to let me keep the Beverly Hills house. I refused. We had bought it together. Neither of us wanted to live there after the divorce. It would be sold. She offered me part of her remaining Arden Productions library. I refused that too. The prenup kept our businesses separate. I was not going to turn betrayal into an opportunity to acquire her career assets. Fair division was enough. That evening, Monarch's forensic audit reached its final conclusion. Julian had diverted $1.6 million from the last Sparrow through Crosswind and related entities. Some transfers were disguised as legitimate producer reimbursements. Others were unsupported. He had also fabricated the Silverline letter and strengthened the Caldera letter after Celeste's edits. Federal prosecutors prepared fraud charges. Then they found something that tied him directly to the watch. A voice memo recorded on his phone the night before the gala. Julian said, "If Ethan catches this early, we lose the match. If he catches it after the hammer falls, Celeste cries, donors get angry, and he backs down. He always backs down when she looks hurt." Another voice answered. "Martin Gage. My operations director. He moved the watch to the archive because he already said no. Julian replied, then get her inside the archive. Martin asked, what do I get? Julian answered, Crosswind will make you whole when Monarch releases the match. The man who opened the cabinet had not simply yielded to Celeste. He had been promised money. Vale Meridian terminated Martin immediately and referred the recording to law enforcement. Bank records later showed Crosswind transferred $75,000 to a company controlled by Martin's wife 2 days after the watch left our archive. The theft had moved beyond marital entitlement. Julian had bribed my employee to defeat the controls protecting my property. And Celeste had walked through the door he opened. Martin Gage surrendered to federal investigators the morning after Vale Meridian terminated him. He brought an attorney, 2 phones, and a bank statement showing the $75,000 Crosswind payment. His lawyer described it as a consulting fee. The investigators asked what Martin had consulted on. He could not answer. By noon, he requested a cooperation agreement. Martin admitted Julian Cross had approached him 6 weeks before the Marlowe Gala. Julian knew Vale Meridian had rejected the last sparrow. He also knew my father's watch was stored in our secure archive. Celeste had mentioned it during a dinner after I refused to sell it. According to Martin, Julian asked whether family property could be released without my direct approval. Martin told him no. Julian asked a different question. What happens if his wife says Ethan already approved? Martin explained the emergency contact procedure. A spouse could retrieve ordinary personal property. Individually insured collectibles required separate authorization. Julian then asked how employees documented exceptions. Martin should have ended the conversation there. Instead, he explained the control system. A week later, Crosswind offered his wife's consulting company $75,000 for production logistics. Martin never disclosed the relationship. He later opened the archive for Celeste despite knowing my authorization was missing. What did Mrs. Vale tell you? The investigator asked. That Ethan would be furious but would not stop the auction once it became public. Did she know you were being paid by Crosswind? No, that distinction mattered. Celeste knowingly took property that was not hers. She did not know Julian had bribed the employee helping her obtain it. Martin continued. Julian said the studio match would cover everything. Once the $1.23 million came in, he'd replace the watch value if Ethan demanded it. The investigator asked, replace it how? With money. He believed a family heirloom could simply be compensated after an unauthorized sale. Martin looked down. That was how he talked about it. That was also how Celeste had begun thinking. If everything had a dollar amount, consent could be treated as timing. Take first. Pay later. Apologize after the project survives. Martin provided messages showing Julian considered the watch only one possible source of leverage. Another proposal involved using our Beverly Hills house as collateral for a temporary production loan. Celeste rejected that one. Her message read, the house is joint property. Ethan would have to sign. Julian replied, so was the watch, practically. Celeste answered, no. The watch is legally his. That's why this is risky. She knew the difference. She did it anyway. Federal prosecutors charged Martin with commercial bribery, wire fraud, and conspiracy involving the unauthorized transfer. His cooperation reduced his eventual exposure. Julian's did not. His attorneys attacked the recording. They claimed, make you whole, referred to future legitimate consulting work. Then investigators produced Crosswind's payment ledger. The $75,000 transfer was entered under VM archive facilitation. There was no innocent interpretation left. Julian was indicted on wire fraud, commercial bribery, conspiracy, and attempted fraud involving the Monarch matching funds. Additional counts related to the fake financing letters and diverted production money remained under grand jury review. He was released on bond with travel restrictions and a prohibition against contacting witnesses. Celeste learned about the indictment from her attorney. She called me through the divorce counsel line. I didn't know about Martin. I believe you. You do? The evidence supports it. For several seconds, she said nothing. I thought you would assume the worst now. I don't need to assume anything. That was the difference between us. Celeste had spent years treating fear as evidence. If she feared I would say no, she acted as though refusal had already become unfair. If she feared Julian's movie would fail, she treated failure as permission to use my resources. I wanted facts even when facts made the story less satisfying. You still think what I did was theft, she said. I think you knowingly removed and attempted to sell property you knew belonged solely to me. That sounds like theft. It is conduct your lawyers can characterize legally. I'm describing what happened. She exhaled. Julian says I ruined him by cooperating. Julian diverted production money and bribed my employee. He says the audit would never have happened if I hadn't panicked after the watch. The audit happened because financing depended on false representations. He says I betrayed him. You are divorcing the wrong person if you need me to explain loyalty to Julian. I don't. Her voice broke. I think I'm finally understanding that I kept confusing loyalty with agreeing to whatever protected someone from consequences. That would be useful to understand. She did not ask whether it changed the divorce. That was progress. Monarch completed its final internal report 1 week later. The studio found no evidence Celeste participated in Julian's personal diversions from production accounts. It found substantial evidence that she knowingly helped create false financing expectations. Her conduct was classified as serious professional misconduct. Monarch permanently barred Celeste Arden Productions from first look or discretionary financing arrangements. She could still audition for Monarch films in the future. She could not produce under studio money without independent oversight. 2 other studios adopted similar restrictions. Her major agency termination became permanent. The luxury brand contracts remained cancelled. The second feature film recast her role. An awards organization removed her from its board of governors. No announcement said her career had ended forever. But the version of her career built around producing power, prestige financing, and executive trust had effectively disappeared. She could act again. She could not walk into a room and ask people to believe her signature because she was Celeste Arden. That trust had become expensive. Arden Productions shrank from 23 employees to 6. Celeste sold its Santa Monica office and moved the remaining staff into a smaller leased space. 3 development executives left. Her longtime business manager resigned after admitting he had processed the joint account collateral without my direct verification. Celeste did not accuse him publicly. She hired an outside fiduciary firm to review every remaining contract. For the first time, no one in her office could treat "Ethan probably knows" as approval. Vale Meridian recovered most of the money advanced through the vendor support fund. Caldera Post reached a settlement with Julian's production entity. The smaller vendors accepted partial payment from Crosswind's frozen assets and Celeste's restitution pool. My company's direct loss ended below $300,000 after recoveries. Our reputation recovered faster than I expected. The independent forensic report mattered. It showed which documents were real, which were altered, and which had never entered our system. 3 lenders renewed relationships. 2 increased their commitments. Rachel Kim presented the results at our quarterly board meeting. We survived because our records were better than the people using our name, she said. I looked at the table. Then improved them. Vale Meridian eliminated emergency spouse access to insured assets. Every external signature now required cryptographic verification. No scanned signature image could authorize financing. Every document using our logo received a traceable identifier. The new policies were inconvenient. Good controls often were. Martin's misconduct had shown what happened when convenience became more important than verification. At divorce mediation, Celeste arrived with a revised settlement proposal. The Beverly Hills house had received an offer. Joint investments were fully disclosed. The unauthorized collateral had been replaced with her separate assets. No contested business property remained. Then her attorney raised one item. Celeste wanted to reimburse me personally for the watch's auction value. $410,000. I declined. Her attorney looked surprised. The money is not damages, she asked. The watch was returned. There were emotional and legal consequences. Legal costs are already covered in the corporate settlement. Celeste spoke quietly. I want to pay because I treated it like money. That is exactly why I don't want the money. She looked at my wrist. I had worn Dad's watch to the mediation. You want me to understand it cannot be priced. It can be priced. The auction did that. She flinched. But price is not the same as replacement. No, if I gave you every dollar I made from Glass Harbor, it wouldn't change what I did. No, she looked toward her attorney. Remove the payment. The next issue was our wedding memorabilia. Photographs. Letters. A set of awards programs Celeste had kept from premieres we attended together. Neither of us wanted to negotiate over them through lawyers. We agreed to divide personal items privately through an inventory service. Then Celeste asked for one thing: a photograph of my father holding the watch at our wedding. No, I said. Her face tightened. Not anger. Pain. Why? Because that photograph is mine. I'm in it. You're standing beside him. So I can't have a copy. I looked more closely at the inventory image. Dad sat at a table laughing. Celeste stood behind him with one hand on his shoulder. It was one of the few photographs where he looked healthy after diagnosis. You can have a digital copy, I said. Her eyes filled. Thank you. That was how property should work. Ask. Receive an answer. Respect it. The simplicity felt almost absurd after everything else. During the break, Celeste asked whether I had read Julian's indictment. Yes. He says I was the one who suggested the watch first. Did you? Yes. That was new. I told him Dad's watch could probably raise several $100,000. When? After you rejected the bridge financing. Before you asked me the first time? Yes. So you offered something before asking whether it was yours to offer? Yes. She stared at her hands. I think that was when I crossed the line. No, she looked up. You crossed smaller ones before. The fake administrative signatures. The joint collateral. The vendor assurances. The film support language. The watch simply made the pattern impossible to call harmless. Celeste nodded. You're right. Why tell me now? Because Julian's lawyer is going to say I originated the idea. Then tell investigators too. I already did. Good. No strategic disclosure designed only for our marriage. No asking me to protect her before another version appeared. The divorce settlement was signed that afternoon. The final hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Then Julian made one last attempt to save himself. His legal team filed motions blaming Celeste for the entire financing scheme. They argued she controlled the celebrity relationships, foundation access, and marriage-based leverage. They attached private messages between them. Several were damaging. Celeste told Julian, Ethan always cleans up after me when real people might get hurt. Another, if Caldera believes Vale is behind us, he'll pay before letting freelancers get crushed. And another, my marriage is the only guarantee he can't cancel. Those messages became public after the court declined to seal portions unrelated to trade secrets. Entertainment sites ran them for days. Celeste did not deny them. She issued one statement: I wrote those messages. I treated my husband's character and company reputation as resources I could use without consent. That was wrong. Mr. Vale did not authorize the financing representations at issue. No accusation that Julian manipulated her. No claim that the messages were taken out of context. No mention of the sacrifices she had made for the film. Her remaining publicist was an outside crisis firm. They recommended a longer statement about emotional coercion. Celeste refused. The shorter version did more damage to her image. It also told the truth. Then she withdrew from public acting for the remainder of the year. Not retirement. No dramatic farewell. She simply stopped auditioning while completing legal obligations and closing most of Arden Productions. The tabloids called it exile. Her attorney called it risk management. Celeste called it something else during our final mediation update. I think I spent 20 years performing even when there wasn't a camera. I did not answer. She continued. Julian gave me a role where I was the brave producer fighting the cold financier. I liked it because it made every boundary you set feel like part of the story. You helped write that role. I know. She looked toward my watch. I made your father into a prop too. Yes. Her eyes filled. Do you know what hurts most? No, I remember him touching the watch at our wedding and telling me, if Ethan ever gets too serious, remind him time is supposed to move. I remembered. Dad had laughed when he said it. Celeste continued. I used to think he was telling me I knew you better than you knew yourself. He was making a joke. I know that now. She smiled sadly. I turned everything into permission. The final federal charging decision arrived 2 days later. Prosecutors offered Celeste a deferred prosecution agreement for the unauthorized signature and attempted matching fund certification. She would admit the conduct, reimburse affected parties, complete community service, maintain independent controls at any production company she operated, and commit no fraud offense for 2 years. If she complied, the charge would be dismissed. Her cooperation against Julian and Martin weighed heavily in the offer. She accepted. Julian did not receive one. His diverted funds, bribery, fabricated letters, and attempt to obtain studio money created a much larger case. His trial was scheduled for the same month as our divorce hearing. Before signing her agreement, Celeste asked the prosecutor one question. Does Ethan have to provide a victim statement? No, the prosecutor said. Good. For once, she did not need my pain to define her consequence. She signed anyway. Julian Cross went to trial 8 days before our divorce hearing. By then, Celeste had completed the first requirements of her deferred prosecution agreement. She transferred the remaining restitution money. She turned over Arden Productions' financial controls to an independent fiduciary. She completed fraud prevention training designed for producers and company officers. None of it restored her contracts. Monarch did not reopen the first look deal. Her former agency did not call. The brands that terminated endorsements did not reconsider. Hollywood had not formally banned her. It had simply learned that working with Celeste now required more verification, more insurance, and more risk than other actresses with similar box office value. That was enough. Julian's attorneys built their defense around one argument. Celeste designed the scheme. He merely believed her husband had informally approved it. The government answered with documents. The Crosswind ledger. The fake producer loan repayment. The Lake Como expenses. The Silverline letter created without Celeste. Martin Gage's $75,000 payment labeled VM archive facilitation. And Julian's own messages telling his team not to ask me directly because a clear refusal would create discoverable problems. Martin testified first. His cooperation agreement reduced his potential sentence, but it did not make him sympathetic. He admitted taking money. He admitted opening Vale Meridian's archive. He admitted knowing Celeste lacked authorization. Julian's attorney attacked him immediately. You are blaming Mr. Cross because you want leniency. I am describing what I did. You accepted money from Crosswind. Yes. Mrs. Vale asked for the watch. Yes. Then why is Julian responsible? Because he paid me to make sure she could get it. The attorney displayed one of Celeste's messages. Julian's film loses everything if this doesn't happen. Ethan will be angry, but he'll recover. Mrs. Vale wanted the transfer, correct? Yes. So Mr. Cross did not force her. No, that answer helped Julian only for a moment. The prosecutor stood on redirect. Did Mrs. Vale offer you $75,000? No. Did she know you had been paid? Not that I know. Who told you to defeat the archive controls? Julian. Who said the studio match would make everything too late to reverse? Julian. Who paid you? Crosswind. Responsibility remained divided where evidence placed it. Celeste testified on the third day. She entered through a side door and took the witness stand without speaking to me. The prosecutor began with the watch. Whose property was it? Ethan's. Did you know that? Yes. Did he authorize the auction? No. Why did you proceed? Because I believed once the auction became public, he would decide stopping it caused too much damage. To whom? To me, Julian's film, the foundation, and the workers relying on the project. Did you consider the damage to Ethan? No. Not enough. Did Julian encourage that belief? Yes. Did he create it? Celeste paused. No. The courtroom became quieter. I already believed Ethan would protect me from consequences, she continued. Julian learned how to use that. The prosecutor moved to the financing letters. Celeste admitted strengthening the Caldera draft. She admitted authorizing an old signature format. She admitted the vendor assurance. Then she drew the line where the evidence supported one. I did not create the Silverline letter. Who did? Julian's team. Did you approve it afterward? No. Did you know Mr. Cross had paid Martin Gage? No. Did you authorize production money to be transferred to Crosswind for personal use? No. Julian's attorney approached. You loved my client? Celeste looked toward the judge. The question was allowed because their personal relationship affected the alleged conspiracy. Yes. Were you planning to leave Ethan for Julian? I was considering it. Did that affect your willingness to use Ethan's property? Yes. So when you now claim Mr. Cross manipulated you, that helps your divorce and your prosecution agreement. I am not claiming he made me do what I admitted. You told investigators he made you feel like a producer. He did. You wanted to save his film. Yes. You suggested the watch. Yes. You strengthened the Caldera letter. Yes. You told him Ethan would clean up the damage. Yes. The attorney smiled. Then this was your plan. Celeste looked directly at him. Parts of it were. The smile disappeared. She continued. I suggested using the watch. I used Ethan's name without valid consent. I helped create false confidence for vendors. Julian separately diverted money, fabricated documents, bribed Martin, and expanded the scheme beyond what I knew. You expect the jury to believe you were both guilty, but he was more guilty. No. I expect them to believe records. That answer ended the performance her old career had been built on. Not tears. Not star power. Records. The jury deliberated 2 days. Julian was convicted of wire fraud, commercial bribery, conspiracy, and multiple counts connected to false financing representations. He was acquitted on 1 count prosecutors could not prove he personally authorized. The mixed verdict mattered. It showed the jury had evaluated evidence rather than punishing a celebrity scandal. His sentencing was scheduled for later. The government sought restitution exceeding $2 million. Crosswind's remaining assets were frozen. The Last Sparrow never resumed production. Caldera eventually obtained rights to certain post-production assets through settlement. The film negative remained tied up among lenders, insurers, and investors. No dramatic premiere. No redemption release. Just an unfinished project that had consumed more loyalty than it deserved. Celeste lost her entire $1.2 million investment. She did not ask me to help recover it. At our final divorce mediation 3 days later, her attorney confirmed that all joint collateral had been released. The Beverly Hills house sale had closed. Joint accounts were divided. Vale Meridian remained mine. Arden Productions remained hers, reduced to a small company with no studio financing arrangement. Neither of us requested support. One issue remained. Celeste wanted permission to keep using Vale in an older producing credit connected to a documentary she had developed while we were married. She had never used my surname professionally as an actress, but the documentary company was registered as Arden Vale Projects. My attorney asked whether I objected. I thought about it. No, Celeste looked surprised. You don't? The company name is already attached to contracts. Keeping it does not give you authority over me or Vale Meridian. Her eyes filled. I expected you to make me remove it. That would create cost without protecting anything. She nodded. Thank you. The next issue was Dad's watch. Not ownership. That had never been disputed legally. Celeste asked if she could say one thing about it before mediation ended. I agreed. I watched the auction video again, she said. Why? My therapist asked me to watch what I looked like when I thought I had one. I said nothing. I was smiling. Yes. I kept thinking if I looked desperate enough in my own memory, maybe I could tell myself I was confused. You were not confused. No, she looked at my wrist. I was proud. That was harder to admit. I thought I had found a way around your refusal. I thought making the sale public proved I understood how Hollywood worked better than you. You understood leverage. I didn't understand ownership. You understood it. You ignored it. She nodded. Yes. Then she placed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a handwritten note Dad had sent her after our wedding. I had never seen it. Celeste said she found it while packing. The note read, Celeste, Ethan will work until every problem looks like a machine he can fix. Make him come home sometimes. You don't have to fix him. Just remind him where home is. Thomas the First read it twice. He liked you, I said. Celeste began crying. I spent years believing he saw me as temporary. He didn't. I wish I had known. You could have asked. The sentence applied to more than Dad. She looked down. Yes. She slid the note toward me. Keep it. It was written to you. I know. Then it is yours. She stared at the paper. The lesson was almost painfully simple. Something could matter deeply to me and still belong to her. I pushed it back. Celeste held the envelope to her chest. Thank you. No. That is how ownership works. For the first time, she laughed through tears. A small, broken sound. The mediation ended with every term settled. Our final hearing was scheduled for Friday. The night before, Monarch Studios released its closing compliance report. Celeste's conduct was listed separately from Julian's. She had knowingly used unauthorized signatures and false financing representations. He had committed broader fraud, bribery, and diversion of production funds. Monarch permanently prohibited Arden Productions from receiving discretionary development financing without independent controls. Celeste herself was not permanently barred from acting. But her producer relationship with the studio was over. Other companies followed the report. One major insurer classified her as heightened risk for any project where she held financial authority. 2 studios told her new agency they would consider her for acting roles only if she had no producing or budget control. The career she wanted most, the one where she became actress, producer, financier, and decision-maker, was gone. Not because I called Hollywood and ended it. I had no such power. Her own record made every gatekeeper arrive at the same conclusion independently. That evening, Celeste called through our attorneys and asked whether I would attend the divorce hearing in person. Yes. Even after everything? It is my divorce too. She was quiet. Ethan, when this started, I thought your report to Monarch ended my career. I didn't file a report to end your career. I know. What do you think now? That my career ended when people stopped believing my signature. That was closer. Then she added, and they stopped believing it because I taught them not to. The next morning, I fastened Dad's watch before leaving for court. Not as a weapon. Not as a message to Celeste. Because Dad had told me to wear it when something mattered. Ending a marriage I once believed would last the rest of my life mattered. So did leaving it without taking what belonged to her. So did refusing to let what she took define everything we had once been. The judge was waiting. The settlement was complete. Julian was convicted. The film was dead. Hollywood had made its decision about Celeste without needing mine. All that remained was whether she could accept the end of our marriage without trying one last time to turn my love, grief, or history into leverage. The divorce hearing did not happen that Friday. Julian cross-filed an emergency motion the night before. His attorneys claimed Celeste had destroyed communications that could reduce his sentence and shift more responsibility onto her. The motion identified 12 missing text messages. If true, it could affect her deferred prosecution agreement, our civil settlement, and the final divorce disclosures. The judge postponed our hearing for 3 weeks. Celeste called through counsel. I did not delete them. Then let forensics prove it. I already turned over my phones. Good. You believe me? I believe the devices will answer. She became quiet. 3 months earlier, she would have heard that as cruelty. Now she only said, fair. Federal investigators obtained backups from Celeste's cloud account, Arden Productions server, Julian's phone, and the carrier. All 12 messages existed. None had been deleted by Celeste. Julian's team had presented an incomplete export. The missing conversations made him look worse. In one, Julian asked Celeste to let Crosswind create a temporary veil guarantee. Celeste replied, no more signatures. Ethan already said no. Julian answered, that didn't stop the Caldera letter. She wrote, it should have. I crossed the line there. Don't create anything else. Another exchange happened 2 days before the gala. Julian said, once the match clears, we reimburse the watch value and Ethan cools down. Celeste answered, the value isn't the problem. He told me that 3 times. Julian replied, then stop thinking like his wife and think like a producer. Celeste wrote, that's exactly what got me here. The messages did not erase her misconduct. They showed she had begun recognizing it before the auction and still went forward. That made her guilt clearer, not smaller. But they destroyed Julian's argument that she controlled the entire scheme. His motion was denied. The prosecutor added the incomplete export to the sentencing record as another attempt to manipulate evidence after conviction. Julian's position worsened. Celeste's did not improve professionally. The deferred prosecution agreement remained in place. Monarch's findings remained unchanged. Hollywood had already seen enough. 2 weeks later, Julian was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. He was ordered to pay restitution to Caldera, Vail Meridian, smaller vendors, and investors harmed by the fraudulent financing. Crosswind was dissolved. His remaining producer interests were placed into receivership. Before sentencing, Julian addressed the court. He said he had become obsessed with finishing the film. He blamed an industry where one failed project could end a career. The judge interrupted. Many films fail without bribing employees or forging financial support. Julian stopped. The judge continued. You did not commit fraud because a movie mattered. You committed fraud because you decided everyone else's property, reputation, and consent mattered less than your movie. That sentence applied to more than Julian. Celeste sat behind the prosecution and heard it too. After court, reporters surrounded her. One asked whether Julian had ruined her career. No, she said. Did he manipulate you? Yes. So isn't he responsible? For what he did. Not for what I did. Do you regret loving him? Celeste paused. I regret using that relationship as a reason to stop respecting my husband. Then she left. It was the last public comment she made about Julian. Our divorce hearing was rescheduled for the following Monday. Before then, Celeste completed the restitution portion of her deferred prosecution agreement. She sold 2 investment properties, closed the remaining luxury lease attached to Arden Productions, and used separate assets to cover every verified loss tied directly to her unauthorized representations. She did not ask Vale Meridian to offset any payment against our divorce settlement. She did not ask me to reduce her obligation because Julian had stolen more. Responsibility was finally being measured by conduct instead of comparison. At our final pre-hearing conference, Celeste's attorney raised one last issue. She wanted to retain one box from Dad's funeral. My attorney looked at me. What box? Celeste answered. Programs, condolence cards, photographs. Thomas gave me some letters while he was sick. They belong to you if they were given to you. There's one photograph Ethan may want. She took it from a folder. Dad stood outside his machine shop wearing the watch. I was beside him, 27 years old and thinner than I remembered. On the back, Dad had written, Ethan thinks responsibility means carrying everything. It doesn't. I read the sentence twice. Celeste watched me. Do you want it? Yes. She handed it over immediately. No trade. No request for the wedding photo in return. No emotional price. Thank you, I said. She nodded. Then she reached into her bag and placed a printed statement on the table. I wrote an apology. My attorney started to speak. Celeste stopped her. I'm not asking him to sign anything. I'm not asking for confidentiality or reconciliation. I just want to say it once correctly. I agreed. She read from the page. I am sorry I treated your father's watch as unused capital because I valued a living person's project more than your right to keep what your father left you. Her voice shook. I am sorry I discussed the watch with Julian before asking you, then treated your refusal as a problem to solve. She continued. I am sorry I allowed my office to use your signature because asking again risked another no. I am sorry I used Vale Meridian's reputation to keep vendors working after your company had already rejected the film. She looked up. I am sorry I pledged our joint account without your consent. Then back to the page. I am sorry I kept telling myself you would fix the damage because you had always protected people from consequences. Her eyes filled. I am sorry I made that protection part of the financing plan. No explanation. No sentence about pressure. No attempt to remind me that Julian had done worse. Then she reached the part that mattered most. I am sorry I said your father was dead and Julian still had a future. She stopped reading for several seconds. When I said it, I was trying to make your grief sound irrational so my choice could feel practical. She folded the page. It was cruel. Yes, I said. I know. She took a breath. I also owe your father an apology I cannot give him. That is not something I can provide for you. I know. Do not turn him into another person whose forgiveness you need to collect. She nodded. That is why I'm keeping his note. The one Dad wrote to her after our wedding. It belonged to her. She finally understood that keeping it did not steal anything from me. I believe your apology is sincere, I said. Her face changed. Does it matter? Yes. Hope appeared. I ended it before sincerity became another form of leverage. It does not change the divorce. She closed her eyes. I know. This time, the words sounded like knowledge rather than strategy. The hearing took place Monday morning. No press was allowed inside. The judge reviewed our agreement. Vale Meridian remained mine. Arden Productions remained Celeste's. The Beverly Hills house had been sold. Joint accounts were divided. The unauthorized collateral had been replaced and released. No spousal support. No disputed property. Dad's watch was listed separately, by serial number, as my sole property. The judge looked toward Celeste. Do you understand the agreement? Yes, Your Honor. Do you believe financial disclosure is complete? Yes. Are you entering the settlement voluntarily? Yes. He asked me the same. I answered yes. Then he signed. 11 years of marriage ended with no final speech. No producer. No studio match. No auction hammer. Only a decree. Outside the courtroom, Celeste asked whether we could walk to the elevators together. I agreed. We stood beneath fluorescent courthouse lights instead of gala chandeliers. I used to think losing Hollywood would be the worst thing that could happen to me, she said. You haven't lost all of Hollywood. No. That's what makes it stranger. She had recently signed with a small agency. One independent director offered her a supporting role in a low-budget drama. No producing credit. No back-end control. No financial authority. Her compensation was less than 10% of what she earned at her peak. She accepted. I can still act, she said. I just can't walk into a room and have everyone assume I'm safe to build a company around. That trust has to be earned. I know. The elevator arrived. She did not enter immediately. Are you wearing the watch because of today? Yes. What would Thomas say? I looked at the cream dial. Dad would probably complain that court had taken too long and ask why I was wasting a Monday morning in a suit. I don't know. Celeste smiled sadly. That's probably healthier than inventing an answer. Yes. She stepped into the elevator. Then turned. Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Celeste. The doors closed. That afternoon, Vale Meridian received final confirmation from Monarch. The Marlowe auction matter was closed. The buyer had long since received a full refund. The foundation adopted new title verification rules for high-value donations. No celebrity spouse could donate individually owned property without direct owner confirmation. No scanned signature could trigger a matching grant. No private foundation officer could waive the rule because the donor was famous. Caldera recovered most of its unpaid balance. The smaller vendors received final distributions. Martin Gage pleaded guilty under his cooperation agreement and received 18 months in federal prison. He permanently lost his position in film finance operations. His wife's company returned the remaining Crosswind funds. The systems built around the scheme disappeared one by one. Then Leah handed me something unexpected. The Marlowe Foundation wanted to know whether I would donate Dad's watch after all. Not to Julian. Not to a film. To a museum exhibition about American family businesses and inherited craftsmanship. The curator had heard the watch belonged to a machinist who built his own shop after returning from Vietnam. They wanted it for 6 months. No sale. No permanent transfer. Full insurance. My answer was immediate. No, Leah smiled. I assumed. Then I thought about Dad's words. Don't lock it away forever. Wear it when something matters. Actually, I said, send me the exhibition proposal. That did not mean yes. It meant I was willing to consider something because I had been asked. The difference was everything. Later that evening, I opened the proposal at home. The museum wanted to display the watch beside photographs of Dad's machine shop, his first payroll ledger, and an oral history recording he made before his death. Nothing about Celeste. Nothing about Julian. Nothing about the auction scandal. The watch would tell Dad's story. Not theirs. I read every page. Then I wrote one word beneath the approval line. Yes. My signature followed. My real one. Given after the question. Given because I chose. The watch would leave my wrist again. But this time, no one was taking it. The museum opened the exhibition 4 months after the divorce. Dad's watch sat inside a glass case beside a black and white photograph of his first machine shop. No velvet auction cushion. No celebrity lighting. No card describing it as a symbol of sacrifice for someone else's dream. The label read, Thomas Vale, machinist and founder, Vale Precision Works. Patek Philippe Calatrava, 1967. Gifted by his father upon returning from military service. Loaned by Ethan Vale. That was all. The museum had asked whether I wanted the auction scandal mentioned. I said no. Dad had owned the watch for 51 years. Celeste had tried to sell it for one evening. The shortest chapter of an object's history did not deserve to define the rest. I attended the opening with Rachel Kim and Leah Morgan. The curator played part of Dad's oral history interview. His voice filled the gallery. You can always tell who really owns a machine by watching who shuts it down when something feels wrong. People laughed softly. I did too. Then Dad continued. Production numbers make people stupid. If a machine is vibrating wrong, you stop it. You don't say, we already promised the customer. A bad promise doesn't make a dangerous decision good. I had forgotten that recording. For a moment, I simply stood there. Rachel looked toward me. He would have hated film financing. He would have hated producers saying, just one more day. He would have liked our new signature controls. He would have complained they took too many clicks. That too. The exhibition remained open for 6 months. When it closed, the watch came back to me. No court order. No title notice. No frozen payment. A museum registrar handed me the case and asked me to sign the return receipt. I checked the serial number before signing. She smiled. Most lenders don't actually verify it. My father would haunt me if I didn't. I fastened the watch around my wrist. Still the same scratches. Still the same worn engraving. Still mine. Celeste's deferred prosecution period ended the following year. She completed every requirement. No new offense. Full restitution. Independent financial controls. Community service with a nonprofit that provided legal and accounting education to young independent filmmakers. She did not teach them how to raise money. She taught a section called What You Cannot Promise for Someone Else. The charge was dismissed according to the agreement. The dismissal did not erase Monarch's findings or the civil settlements. It meant she had completed the legal resolution offered to her. Her acting career returned slowly. The supporting role she accepted after our divorce received strong reviews. One critic wrote that Celeste was better when she stopped performing Certainty. She sent me the review. Then, before I could respond, another message appeared. Sorry. That wasn't something you needed. Ignore it. I did. We had no children together. No property remained shared. No legal reason required continued contact. Eventually, our messages stopped completely. I heard about her through the industry like everyone else. She took smaller roles. Then a lead in an independent drama with no producing credit. The film premiered at Sundance. Reporters asked whether she planned to rebuild Arden Productions. No, she said. Never. Not until someone other than me controls the money. The answer became a small headline. Years earlier, Celeste would have considered that limitation humiliating. Now she understood that talent and financial authority were separate things. Being excellent at one did not automatically restore trust in the other. Arden Productions technically continued to exist, but only as a rights-holding company for older projects. It had no discretionary financing arm. No vendor credit authority. No employee could apply a signature without third-party verification. Celeste never returned to the level of power she held before The Last Sparrow. Her Hollywood career did not vanish. The career she had built, actress, producer, financier, studio partner, executive decision-maker, did. That part never came back. Julian Cross served his sentence at a federal facility in California. His appeal challenged several restitution calculations but not the core convictions. The court reduced one vendor amount and left the rest intact. Crosswind Creative Holdings was dissolved permanently. The Last Sparrow became an asset in bankruptcy. For 2 years, investors argued over whether finishing the film might recover part of their losses. Eventually, an independent buyer purchased the footage for a fraction of the original production budget. A different director completed a 98-minute version using existing material. Julian received no new producing credit. Celeste declined an offer to participate in additional photography. The film released quietly on streaming. I never watched it. Rachel did. She told me once. Was it worth 4 years of litigation? That bad? No. That's the problem. It's just a movie. That seemed like the correct ending for something Julian and Celeste had once treated as more valuable than consent, property, and marriage. Martin Gage completed his sentence. After release, he asked Vale Meridian for a neutral employment reference. Leah recommended confirming only dates and title. I approved. He had committed a crime against my company. That did not give me a lifelong right to sabotage every future job beyond what truthful background checks already revealed. Vale Meridian changed more than I expected after the scandal. The independent signature system we developed became a product. Small production companies had the same problem we did: scanned signatures floating through email, managers making verbal promises, producers using old letters as templates, spouses assuming household familiarity created business authority. We built a verification platform that tied every financing representation to a unique digital approval. A document could still be forged. It could no longer appear legitimate inside our system without leaving an obvious gap. Within 3 years, several lenders licensed the technology. Rachel became CEO of the new verification subsidiary. At the board meeting approving her appointment, she looked at me. "You realize the product exists because your wife auctioned your father's watch." No, that was definitely the trigger. The product exists because people kept pretending signatures were administrative details. She smiled. Fine. Much less dramatic. Vale Meridian grew. Not because Hollywood suddenly became more honest. Because honesty became cheaper to verify. The restitution fund we established for small vendors eventually recovered 78% of its payouts through settlements and bankruptcy distributions. The board wrote off the rest. One of the affected freelance editors, Marlon Hayes, later became a regular client. At a financing panel, he told an audience, "The worst part of being lied to wasn't the unpaid invoice. It was learning that the company name I trusted had never actually spoken." That sentence stayed with me. Celeste had used my name because she believed reputation was a resource inside our marriage. She did not understand that reputation was a record of decisions I had actually made. A forged signature did more than imitate consent. It borrowed years of trust without permission. 5 years after the auction, Marlowe Foundation invited me back to the same gala. Different leadership. Different auction rules. The foundation had completely rebuilt its high-value donation process after Lot 37. Every donor had to verify title independently. Matching funds did not release until transfer documents cleared. Spousal property required direct confirmation from the titled owner. I almost declined. Then the invitation said the gala would fund completion grants for below-the-line crew members whose projects collapsed after fraud or insolvency. Not producers. Not stars. Editors. Electricians. Costume assistants. Sound technicians. People who often discovered last that the money was gone. I attended. Dad's watch was on my wrist. No one asked for it. Near the end of the evening, the auctioneer introduced a different lot, a restored 1972 Porsche donated by a retired cinematographer. The auctioneer paused before bidding. "For the record, title has been independently verified." The room laughed. So did I. The car sold for $280,000. The donor signed the transfer afterward. No assumption. No emergency paperwork. No celebrity shortcut. At dinner, a young producer recognized me. "Mr. Vale, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Is it true one recording destroyed Celeste Arden's career?" I looked toward him. He appeared genuinely curious, not malicious. "No, but the archive video started an investigation. And Monarch dropped her. After reviewing documents. So the video mattered." "Yes. But you don't think it ended her career?" "No, what did?" I thought about the easiest answer. The watch. The forged signature. Julian. The letters. All were incomplete. People stopped trusting commitments made in her name, I said. Because of what the recording showed? Because the recording matched the paperwork. He nodded slowly. "So you didn't expose her publicly?" "I gave evidence to people whose property and money were involved." "Would you have posted it if the studio ignored you?" "I don't know. That was the truth. I never had to choose. The system worked. The auction company froze the transfer. Monarch froze the match. Investigators preserved evidence. Court separated responsibility. Public spectacle was not required to recover my watch." The young producer looked toward my wrist. "That's it?" "Yes." "The watch?" "Yes." "Can I see it?" I held out my arm. He examined the engraving on the back. "For Thomas. Keep going. Your grandfather wrote that?" "Had it engraved." He smiled. "Worth $410,000. The market said so once." "And to you?" I pulled my sleeve back over it. "Not for sale." He laughed. "Fair enough." That was the answer Celeste had refused to accept. Not for sale. A complete sentence. No financial model required. No explanation of grief. No debate about whether someone else's dream was more useful. No spouse entitled to convert it into yes. Years later, Celeste and I crossed paths at an industry memorial for Marissa Cole, her former agent. We had not spoken in almost 3 years. Celeste approached after the service. She looked older. So did I. Her career had stabilized into respectable acting work. No blockbuster franchises. No studio production empire. She seemed less surrounded. I heard Vale Meridian launched the verification platform internationally, she said. Yes. Congratulations. Thank you. She noticed the watch. You still wear it. Sometimes. She smiled faintly. I'm glad. There was no meaningful response to that. Then she said, I donated Thomas's note. I looked at her. To whom? The machine shop exhibition. They asked whether I had anything showing what he was like outside work. The note was yours. I know. Did you want to give it? Yes. Then good. She laughed softly. You really did reduce my entire moral education to property law. No. Property law was just the part you kept failing. For the first time, we both laughed. Then her expression became serious. I asked them to display a copy and return the original afterward. That sounds sensible. I learned. Yes. She looked toward the crowd. I'm sorry, Ethan. You already apologized. I know. I'm not asking anything from it. I believed her. Take care, Celeste. You too. We walked in different directions. No reconciliation. No hatred. No final punishment. Just two people who once built a marriage around the assumption that love could survive every informal boundary until one person finally treated consent as optional. Dad's watch continued ticking. It had survived his shop. His illness. His funeral. My wedding. An unauthorized auction. A federal investigation. A museum display. And every attempt to turn its meaning into money. Sometimes I still looked at the engraving. For Thomas. Keep going. When Dad gave me the watch, I thought those words meant endurance. Stay. Carry more. Fix what breaks. I understand them differently now. Keep going does not always mean keep holding on. Sometimes it means stop the machine. Reject the false promise. Take back what belongs to you. Sign only what you choose. And leave when someone decides your no is merely a problem waiting to be engineered away. My actress wife auctioned my late father's watch to fund another man's movie. I got the watch back. Julian went to prison. Celeste lost the Hollywood career built on other people trusting her authority. But the most important thing I recovered was not worth $410,000. It was something no auctioneer could price. My signature meant yes again. Only when I wrote it. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.